Good morning, everybody. Today I want to do a little bit on John chapter 12. I went to my coffee shop. I don't have my coffee right now. I have a lot when I get up in the morning, but I usually get some coffee. So I go at 8 o'clock today, and it's a staff meeting. They don't open till 9. They usually open at 7, and that's not early enough for me. Sometimes I do a couple of other places. I got a few secret spots where people can kind of go where I don't have to be with everybody. All right. I might title this video, and watch me forget to share the story. But it might have I won't say the title right now. You'll read it when you see the thing. But hopefully I'll get to it at the end of the thing, unless I forget. Yesterday I was with Pops, and it was funny, you know. Pops, he's got so many animals. He's got dogs, and he's got, and I got a lot of wind here too. He's got dogs, and he's got cats, and they keep having puppies, but he had one little dog named Loco. And when Pops was taking care of Charlie, even though Charlie was a severe alcoholic and, you know, he'd be there drunk a lot, but Charlie loved those animals. And sometimes I'd visit Charlie, and he'd have all the cats in his bed, and they'd always have new kittens. And sure enough, yesterday, Pops, there's new kittens. They must be a few days old. And picks them up, you know, they're under my chair. And he's like, "What is your name?" Like he's going to give him names. And he's already thinking, "What is this one's name? What am I going to call this one?" And the little puppy that Charlie boy liked, named Loco, died. And Pops thinks maybe somebody poisoned him because he had him chained outside. So after I put that air conditioner, I put the new one in the one room, and then the old air conditioner in the back room. We brought a mattress, an old mattress. And then he went and got the mama dog that was also chained outside, and he brought her in that room. And he's petting her head. He says, "You be safe here. You be safe here." You know, it says in Proverbs, wicked people are cruel to their animals, but righteous people, good people, take care of them. Today, let's do John chapter 12. I talked the other day about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus had the two sisters, Martha and Mary, and I think that was chapter 11 we did. So chapter 12, Jesus goes to the town called Bethany, where they're from, which is my oldest daughter's name. And they're having a meal, and they're going to eat. And Martha, this is kind of famous, how Martha was busy serving and doing everything, getting everything ready for the meal. But Mary sat at Jesus with the table. And this is where we read the story. Some say there might be a couple of accounts, different occasions of this, but either way, Mary anoints Jesus. She has this very expensive alabaster box of ointment, and she pours it on him. It's very expensive. It's, according to Judas, which I'll get to in a minute, it's like a year's worth of wages, a year of income, wasted. She wipes his feet with her hair. Now, Judas says, "Why was this waste made? We could have sold this and given it to the poor." And it says in John 12, chapter 12, "This said he, not because he cared for the poor, but because he held the bag. He was the treasurer, and he stole from it." So he was in charge of the homeless ministry. And he was getting money for the homeless ministry. And he was stealing the money. That was his motivation for that. It was about 3 times as much money that he actually later would make a deal to betray Jesus for the pieces of silver. So that perfume. And Jesus says he's cryptic. He's cryptic in this chapter. He says, no, she did this to anoint my body because of the burial, my death. He talks about his death a lot. So, he says, the poor you always have with you, but me you do not have always. You know, there's another verse in John where he says, where I go you cannot come, and the Jews said, will he kill himself? I think that's chapter 8. Much of the language of Jesus is about that. In this chapter, the influential people come to Jesus. I'm trying to get out of the wind. Maybe I'll go down by this thing. Some ladies pulling up here. He says that they're at the feast, this famous feast, and 6 days, I think, before the Passover, which is the big feast. And the Greeks come to Philip, one of the disciples, one of the followers, and say, we would see Jesus. We want to have a little appointment with Jesus. So they're excited. Ooh, the influence. Oh, wow. The Greeks, Jesus, these are the intellectuals. The Jews were looking for a sign, the scripture says, and the Greeks seek wisdom, Paul said in Corinthians. But Christ is the wisdom of God. You want wisdom, you go to Christ. So, Jesus hears that the Greeks, the intellectuals, the influential people want to have a meeting with him. And the response, of course, the disciples, I'm assuming, are thinking, this is great, you know. What promotion for the ministry. So he says, again, he's cryptic. He says, I'm here to do the will of my Father. And except a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, it will bring forth much fruit. And people that are trying to save their lives are going to lose them. And you got to hate your life in order to save it. And then where I am, that's where the servants will be. In essence, he said, if you want a meeting with me, I'm with my Father all the time, communicating, walking in the will of my Father. And I'm here, Jesus is saying, I'm the light of the world. And anyone that wants to come has to go through the door, if you will. It's in John's Gospel, Jesus said he's the door of the sheep. And also his way, the way of the cross. It says the hireling doesn't care for the sheep. He's doing it for money. He's a hireling. When he sees the wolf come, he runs. So there's a way. It's the cross. It's the way of the cross. Jesus says, if these guys want to have a meeting with me, there's wind there. If these guys want to have a meeting with me, then they can go the way of the cross, like all of you guys are going. And then where I am, then they can be there. And his death, he prophesies of his death. It's in that chapter, it's interesting because it says many of the chief people, the influential people, they did believe on him, but they would not confess him for fear of the Pharisees, the Jewish people leaders, because they already agreed that if any would confess him, he would be put out of the synagogue. And it says they loved the glory of men more than the glory of God. That's what they were doing. They saw their religious activity, ministry. It was all viewed through how other men saw how successful they were. Jesus said they made long prayers, they did all types of things, phylacteries, which were like scriptures. It said in the Old Testament, the law of God. We're going to do some of this when we do Revelation about the number of the beast and all. What that really is talking about, the mind that's addicted to iniquity. Iniquity is sin. But iniquity is a term for sin that talks about like in the mind of people that are sinful, humanity. There are inroads, there are furrows, there are like paths in the mind. And when we sin in our lives, those things are like tracks. That's what iniquity is. Jesus destroys that. He takes that away. So, the people of his day, they saw everything, the the Old Testament scripture said, have the law of God on your mind, have it on your hands. And so the legalists made little pouches, wrote the scripture, Pharisee type thing. These are called phylacteries. Phylacteries. They make broad their phylacteries. They were having the old, like holding the Bible strapped to your head with a piece of leather. Legalistic. And we view these verses in Revelation the same way. You know, we're thinking people are going to stick chips in our bodies and look, the image of the beast. The sinful nature, the enemy, Satan is real, but he tries to implant his image upon our minds. Go up here, I got wind down here too. So Jesus, he had people that believed, but they didn't want to openly say it. I'll talk loud, hopefully you won't hear too much wind. Because they were afraid, and they were looking for the glory of men. The other day, and in that chapter, he speaks about his death. He speaks about, Father, should I pray that this hour, he says this in general as well, should pass, but this is the hour I've come for. Jesus says, now, if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto me. This spake he of his death. Cryptic. And that he would draw all men unto him. And then he calls us to follow that path, that way of the cross. Paul says, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I have a niece, and she's autistic. But you know, autism, in some ways it's a gift. You have certain gifts, but they live in Corpus Christi. She's a nice girl, Mariah. And but they were going to move up to Austin for a little while because the school system there is better for working with special needs kids and all. So they went, and my wife told me the other day, though, that they had to come back into town because one of the kids that was also autistic died. And my wife told me that boy hung himself, and he was 15. And he, I'm sure, had a lot of bullying and teasing and things like that in school. 15 years old. So why do people do things? Many years ago, I remember getting mad about the wind. Many years ago, I remember at Horace Mann School. I took a picture of it not too long ago. There's a nice shrimp boat at Horace Mann School that I went to in North Bergen. I was like, not, I don't know if I was a mean kid. Let's see here. But I would fight in school. Some of my friends on Facebook probably were, maybe you guys were in the classes. But it was kind of mean. I would hit you very hard, right in the face. Right in class, didn't make a difference. And it was hard, you know, I would set it up like a boxing punch, you know, very hard. I think I knocked out a friend once, or he was faking, but I hit him hard. So I did that more than once. And I never started it. It was maybe very little thing they would say or something. It didn't have to be much. I just wanted a chance to do that. So then I'd wait and say, okay, you're getting it. As soon as the bell rings, you're going down. As soon as the class bell would ring, I'd do it. So I remember this reminded me of, I was in school, I was going to walk here, somebody's here. And it was Horace Mann, I guess I was, I don't know, 12 years old or something, 13. And there was some kid that was walking up and he was on a crutch. And I said real loud, I said, oh, what do you want everybody to feel sorry for you? because you're on that crutch open, and he looked a little shocked, and other people did. Then I looked down. He had no foot. He got ran over by a train that year, and that was like his first week back to school without the foot. That kid who hung himself, they made fun of him. And in us, the image that's imprinted on us, I'm going to talk about this more when I look, homeless guys right here. I'm going to talk about this more when we do Revelation. But the image imprinted on us, the image of the beast, that iniquity, Paul says in Ephesians, that the spirit of the prince of the power of the air that works in the children of disobedience. It's iniquity, it's sin, it's these things. This is how you do spiritual warfare. You defeat the great victory. Jesus said in that chapter, now is the prince of this world judged. Now is the prince of this world cast out. Now he also says in the Gospels an interesting thing. He gave the disciples authority to cast out demons. And he said, they came back and said, even the demons are subject unto us through your name. He said, I saw Satan like lightning fall from heaven. But he said, don't rejoice in that, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Relationship. So how does Jesus defeat the enemy? It says in Hebrews that Jesus through death destroyed him that had the power of death, that is the devil. And he delivered those who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. Oh, there goes a nice speedboat. So he dealt with the sin issue. That's how the prince of this world is cast out. He dealt with it. And he destroys it within us, and then that's how we get free. That's how we get free. I'll talk a little of that when I talk more on Revelation. Those who worship the beast in his image and have his mark. Those who are in iniquity and in sin. Satan is the father of lies. He's a murderer from the beginning. And murder, John says in his epistle, if you hate your brother, you're a murderer. And how could you have God's life in you? So, the expression of the enemy that we see the most is that hatred, wanting to get people. That little kid, they went after him, those other kids, and he hung himself. So the victory that we're going to have that overcomes the world is the new life we have in Christ. And we're going to see that in the book of Revelation. We're going to see the Lamb glorified. We're going to see them saying, praising him, thou art worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof, for you were slain and you have redeemed us unto God by your blood, out of every nation, kindred, tribe, and tongue. And you have made us kings and priests unto God and our Father, and we shall reign on earth. Amen.